to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports. Coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond, and London, England, as well as Paris, France, of course. You good old boys in Canada, we love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south, in the land of the free and the home of the brave, on a beautiful January the 6th, 2020. Grando Deportes, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Oh, Charlton, it's been wonderful. It's been a deluge of football all weekend long. I mean, we had some excitement, we had some heartbreak, we had some controversy. We had all the things that's involved in the NFL, and the officials meant nothing about it.
Yeah, it's all fair and love and war. It seems like every playoff game, at least in New Orleans, has a sad ending. I don't know how the people get through it down south. I understand why the moon shines extra strong, Big C. I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you. Big C Sports, powered by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing. And I really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. You can also follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast Television, Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. You just got to download that app, and it's all fair and love and war. I also want to just say, I heard today, Big C, I know we talk about sports all the time, and that's fine and dandy too, but I heard there were some B-52 bombers that were being sent, across the seas, and I hate that because it reminds me of Vietnam, a foolish war, but sometimes we don't learn from history. But I know there's still a lot of military veterans that were in Vietnam, and they still have nightmares about what happened there. I just want to make sure we go out the National Suicide Hotline for people who need help. It's 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255, or they can text 838-255. That's 838-255 and get some help. Big C, why is that so important to you?
Well, Charlton, is so important. I'll take you back to 2011, where then citizen Donald Trump made a public statement on the news that President Barack Obama would start a war with Iran to get reelected. And ironically, 9 years later, Charlton, this is what he is doing, trying to get elected, putting our war veterans and active member duties in harm's way, Charlton, for his personal gain.
Yeah.
The act that he did, which is what's wrong, you need Congress approval to make an airstrike like that. And he's gone beyond that, Charlton, for personal gain. And his personal gain hurts our military personnel, Charlton. And when we think about our veterans, that we give out this 800 number for suicide prevention, this is the reason why. These members, Charlton, have no need to go to war.
No.
And when they return from home, from being in tours of duty in the Middle East and wherever else around the world, Charlton, our military veterans don't have the support.
Yeah.
We see a commander-in-chief who took 5 deferments from Vietnam because he didn't want to go fight against somebody, but he has no problem putting someone else's children in harm's way.
Yeah.
And when these veterans come back, Charlton, if they survive, they're in, heinous ways mentally and physically.
Yeah.
So the suicide prevention hotline number is there, Charlton, hopefully to help to stem the tide. Unfortunately, we know that a lot of veterans and displaced citizens of Americans don't have cell phones. And the 800, number is there, but they don't always have ways to contact it. But suicide prevention can help in this country, Charlton, because when we lose dozens of Americans every day to suicide, that's a horrific disease that our government really pays no attention to. We have an administration wanting to go to war with a foreign country other than help our American citizens and veterans, Charlton, prevent suicide in this country. So our suicide prevention hotline number and our PSAs that we do on our show every day hopefully would help stem the tide of that horrific disease and help save lives in America.
And I know it does. 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. And hopefully get some help. I just hope that everybody is not so obtuse that we are so focused on who won a football game. If for people who have you really have the heart for military, because we are kept safe because of them. And I hope more shows start reaching out and just saying thank you and getting some help also. Big C, I know football is this great game, and as you come to the conclusion of it, the conclusion of it's like win or go home. There's such a finality that happens, and you're very prescient. We were talking about the game with the great Tom Brady and Tannehill going in there, not having the same accolades, of course. Vrabel, as a former coach for the great Bill Belichick, the Jedi Knight Master, used some of his own tricks to keep the ball, to keep the clock running, to run up the clock, run off over a minute and a half by taking the intentional delay of game. But I think Brady's coming back next year. I think Belichick and him would be together. You can't go somewhere else and start a 42, 43-year-old quarterback and build something new. But just give me the sense, you called that game. If Henry could run the way he was running, that New England would probably lose that game. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, this is playoff football, and it comes down to ground control. And we look at the teams who won the playoff games, Charlton. It was about being able to control the ball on the ground, making a difference.
Yeah.
Tannehill was really ineffective in the game in New England. It was all about Derrick Henry, 120 yards rushing in the first half.
Yeah.
No one could stop this individual. So as we look at playoff football, we look at inclement weather, who has the ground attack that can help keep defenses at bay, Charlton, because it's not easy to cover in the secondary when you have to keep some personnel up at the line of scrimmage. Tom Brady's, future and career, it's up in the air. It's not until March that he has to make a decision in free agency. Everyone says, well, will he resign with New England? You know that the owner, Robert Kraft, wants him. They have a long-running relationship.
Yeah.
And if it's Robert Kraft's words, he will be in New England.
Yeah.
If Tom Brady moves on, he wouldn't be the first Super Bowl winning quarterback to move on in his career. We saw Joe Montana move on from San Francisco, which a lot of people thought that he would never do. And so these are things that happen in football. It's about rebuilding an organization. You know that Tom Brady, if he continues to play, only has maximum 2 years, I believe, left on his body.
Yeah.
And if he was to move on, I think he would move on to the West Coast. There had been some talk about him selling his home in the New England area, Charlton.
Yep.
He's from California. There's a couple teams in the West Coast that are in need of quarterbacks.
Yeah.
The Los Angeles Chargers would be a perfect fit when you think about the Spanos family moving into a new stadium.
Yep.
His wife and her career, and Tom Brady is Madison Avenue as far as, marketing. Him going to the Chargers on a 2-year, $60 million deal, $45 million signing bonus would not be a big salary cap hit for the Chargers. But we know that Phillip Rivers, I think the Chargers are going to move on from him.
Yeah.
You look at the weapons that the Chargers possess offensively and defensively. Coach Anthony Lynn, I think it would be a perfect landing spot if he chooses not to go back to New England. Everyone says Las Vegas. I don't see the fit between him and Gruden with a team that's trying to build. But, don't throw San Francisco out of the mix. If they don't make it to the Super Bowl, they have a tremendous defense. Jimmy Garoppolo, he could be traded to New England.
Yeah.
Tom Brady would be a perfect fit in the Mike Shanahan's offense.
It's interesting when you're bringing that up. That game, we see the final score and we see, that it was a 2013 game. But really, it really wasn't that. It was so close, and the Patriots had a chance to win, but they just didn't have any offense. It was so glaring as we saw in the playoff game. Because when you see someone do something at a high level for so many years, and even getting the benefit of the doubt with officiating at times for many, many years, I was still thinking that they would find a way to pull it out. But something also that I noticed and you mentioned about players moving on. When Brady was able to lead in the past, it's not that he was ever a running threat, Big C, but they always had someone out of the backfield. They didn't have Edelman playing the wide out. He was like an in route receiver. I think about all the big players that they've lost off of that team, this year because of suspensions or just not being able to get things done. That, to me, was why they lost, not because Brady's dropping off. That make any sense, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, this is a team, you look at the situation. Gronkowski retired. Josh Gordon got released, and he was being productive, but there were some things that led to his release. Antonio Brown got released. If those two receivers had been with the New England Patriots, I think the New England Patriots would still be playing today.
Yeah.
But because they lost two key receivers, Charlton, and Brady lacked of weapons, they've had to shuffle their offensive line the entire year. But when you think about New England, defensively, they held Tennessee to 13 points.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like it was a blowout. The pick six in the end made a big difference in the final score.
Yeah.
But this was a team that was right there defensively. Offensively, I thought it was suspect in the play calling where you're trying to run the ball wide, and you're not going to run the ball wide against very athletic linebackers, which Tennessee had.
Yeah.
And Vrabel knew the tendencies of this team. He's watched them. He's played against them. He defeated them last year. Brady is your major offensive weapon. You had to let him throw the ball even when you're on the 1-yard line. You had to allow him to do that. I think his arm was better than any legs in the backfield that New England had in those type of situations. So I question the play calling of McDaniels more than I question the inaccuracies of Brady throughout the game.
Yeah, I think when you look at how they were limited, there was a 20-yard pass that he had to Edelman that moved the sticks on two. I think it was a third down and 2, and that was when they passed on 3rd and 2, just like what you're mentioning. Picked up 20 yards on that one. Also, the timing's not there with N'Keal Harry and also Tom Brady. They didn't connect on a 3rd and 6, but they connected on a 3rd and 2 when he went to Edelman. A lot of that's just filling your guys out. But also, there's something about this thing. I know Chung was injured on defense, but New England it's like a battle of attrition, and people don't really see that. That defense did not look as good as they looked earlier in the year. But as you mentioned, down to that last play, that pick six, they didn't give up. It was like 13 points. They were right there in the game, Big C. So I know that the Patriots will rebound. I don't think Brady's going to want to go out with that kind of performance. But isn't it ironic that the Tuck rule that sent him to his first Super Bowl, it might be the pick six that ends him going to any more, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, you never know what someone's career has in the end. When you think about Joe Montana, what ended his career?
Yeah.
A sack in San Francisco that hurt his shoulder.
Yeah.
And, stopped him from going to the Super Bowl, where it was the catch that got him to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So when you look at contrasting plays, Charlton, he moved on to San Francisco, got them back, not from San Francisco, but to Kansas City.
Yep.
Got them back to the playoffs. But we look at Joe Montana forever as a San Francisco 49er, even though he finished up as a Kansas City Chief.
Yeah.
When I look at Tom Brady in this new era of football, you don't hit quarterbacks like you did when Joe Montana got injured by Marshall in San Francisco.
That's right.
In that NFC Championship game that sent the Giants to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Brady, he walked out of this game unscathed other than mentally.
Yeah.
Knowing that he left points on the board on several occasions, Charlton. He left them on the field. He didn't get them on the scoreboard. So he feels that he has unfinished business. I don't think that Robert Kraft, as an owner, if there's a decision to be made, and there's been much rhetoric in the media about the relationship between Belichick and Brady.
Right.
If that decision is about relationships and feelings, Robert Kraft would choose Tom Brady over Bill Belichick and move on from Bill Belichick. So they're going to have a meeting of the minds over the next couple of months and decide how that relationship is going to go. Does the coach stay? Does the quarterback stay? Does both of them stay? Because that's always been the friction laid out in the media.
Yeah. Let me ask you, that's an interesting point. Brady, as you mentioned earlier, maybe he has 2 good seasons left in him, 2020 and 21. And you would really feel that Kraft would stick with Brady over Belichick, who could probably coach at least another 10 years. Big C, your thoughts?
Yes, I do, because in the NFL, it's about what can you do right now. You're not worried about can you build a team 10 years down the road. None of us are blessed with living forever. Robert Kraft understands that.
Yeah.
And as an aging owner and an aging quarterback, you want productivity now.
Yeah.
And what you have to do for Tom Brady, regardless whether he's in New England or whether he moves on to another team, is that he needs the weapons. And when anybody looks at New England's receiving core, Charlton, Julian Edelman, which everybody who played the Patriots knew that Julian Edelman was the core receiver.
Yeah.
You were without your tight end, Ben Watson, the first 4 games of the season.
Yep.
You had Antonio Brown for 1 game.
Yeah.
Okay? You had Josh Gordon for 6 games. So when you look at the revolving door at receiver, the one consistent with the Patriots was Tom Brady on offense. Sonny Michel did not have a sophomore season like he had as a rookie.
No.
He didn't gain 1,000 yards. He had 4 new offensive linemen this year rotating in and out of the lineup. So Tom Brady was consistent. He has to have the personnel around him now that he's aging to be better. He doesn't have to be better. The personnel has to be better.
You know, I agree with what you're saying, and I even push back to all the people saying, my goodness, you watch Lamar Jackson play, you watch Deshaun Watson play, you watch Russell Wilson. Those guys, they're a 1-2 threat. They can run our pass. Brady can't do that. But I think you do based on what your team is built on. New England's not built on a run-pass option with a quarterback that can run 30, 40 yards downfield. I think you can keep winning with him. But I'm surprised that you think he would stick with Brady over Belichick. But I understand how he's maybe more affinity for a player than it is for a coach. I want to take you on the other side of that equation, though. You're a defensive guy. You know these guys are bigger, stronger, and faster now than they were 20 years ago when Brady came into the league. There was a time when Joe Namath, in the Super Bowl, I think Super Bowl III, he actually scrambled for a touchdown, and the guys didn't want to hit him because he had bad knees, and they had a lot of respect for him. Well, I don't know if guys, maybe they have the same for Brady, but do you feel it's a liability, though, if he's there and he can't be what Russell Wilson is or Lamar Jackson or Watson is? Does that make any sense, Big C? Your thoughts?
He's never been what Russell Wilson is. He's never been what Deshaun Watson is. He's never been what Lamar Jackson is. Neither have any of those players ever been what Tom Brady is either.
Yeah.
None of those players can say, I have 6 Super Bowl championships. None of those players can say, I've been to the Super Bowl 9 times. So if people want to compare the modern quarterback to a Tom Brady, there's never been a quarterback in the history of the NFL like a Tom Brady.
Yeah, I agree. Sometimes there's something to say for when you stand in the pocket, you really got to trust your passing acumen more than saying I can run myself out of this situation. Let me go to the other side of the ball because people think about how dominant Derrick Henry was in that game, 182 yards, average 5.4 yards to carry. Before that, against Houston, he had 211 yards, Big C. This guy is amazing. He's like 400 yards of production in his last 2 games. And when you think about that, that's from a running back. That's not a guy that's a receiver. How do you stop him, or is it just obvious you can't, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, anybody who's ever played football understands at the end of the season that the body has attrition on it, that you become tired. Derrick Henry is a perfect example of you take a defensive lineman, you put him in the backfield, he runs a 4.4 40. Nobody wants to hit him in the cold weather, Charlton.
Right.
And you look at his productivity in the last 2 games, 400 yards on the ground. The guy's a beast. I mean, Derrick Henry has always been there. For some reason, Derrick Henry has woken up this year. He's had this ability ever since he's been in the NFL. He's just been shy about it. But now he understands, and Mike Vrabel has lit a fire under his butt, and he's responding. He knows this team will go as far as that he can carry him, no pun intended. And so you look at Ryan Tannehill. Ryan Tannehill didn't have as many yards passing as Derrick Henry had rushing in this game. So this game, as well as the last game, was all about Derrick Henry. Had stated that before. If Derrick Henry is the player that he had been the last couple of weeks, then they win this game because there's nobody stopping him in the game. I like Tennessee in the game against Baltimore. with Derrick Henry running. I don't see Baltimore's defense being any better than New England's defense in this game coming up. I see Tennessee winning that game, regardless of the accomplishments of, Lamar Jackson. Of the two runners, I take Derrick Henry over Lamar Jackson because Derrick Henry will wear out your defense.
Wow, that's interesting to see what happens. The only caveat I would say is when Baltimore rested their players in that final week, it reminds me when Dallas rested their players going into Philadelphia 2 years ago. So they wanted to have Tony Romo play over Prescott. That was Jerry Jones' feeling. And now that's what happened. I don't know if it's going to be the same thing here. It's hard to see that someone could compete with the Baltimore Ravens bring so much energy. So, Big C, a little bit of phone static, but we got it all figured out. The Ravens have a lot of offensive firepower because it's not just about what Jackson can do with his feet. He's also the leading passer in the NFL in touchdowns. I think they're a much better team than New England offensively. Defensively, yeah, maybe they cancel each other out, but I still see how the Ravens just have too much for Tennessee to overcome. Remember, Tennessee, they were like 13 points before the pick six, so I don't see them being able to keep Baltimore from getting at least 30. But they did take some time off against Pittsburgh. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Baltimore is not proven in the playoffs. They don't have a history of dominating people. You remember last year, they were out in the first round of the playoffs against the Chargers. So there is a book on what Baltimore does. The thing that Tennessee brings to this game is some aggressive linebackers, and that's what Lamar Jackson doesn't want to see is aggressive linebackers that will hit him. So don't think that he's going to go out there and out-athletic the linebackers in Tennessee. What he has done throughout the year is great. But Vrabel is a defensive-minded coach. He has players right now playing with great intensity.
Yeah. Well, that's going to be interesting. I want to go to another game because when we look at quarterback play, and oftentimes quarterbacks are given too much credit when a team wins, but also too much blame when a team loses. I want to take you down to the state of Texas, and I saw Watson make a play that I hadn't seen many people make, where he was crunched by two players, spun away, and he was still being pressured, threw the ball downfield, and the receiver took off and ran it down inside the 10-yard line, and that helped wrap that game up. But I've also seen that same Watson try to be Superman too many times, not trust the process, and it's cost them too. But tell me what you think of that game against Buffalo, and then I want to get on what I think the Buffalo Bills quarterback panicked after a while, and Allen, Bixby, your thoughts.
What I saw in that game, Charlton, was two inept head coaches, O'Brien and McDermott. Both of these coaches screwed up consistently throughout this game, Charlton. And so this was a coin flip who was going to win.
Yeah.
Buffalo, you have Houston down 16 points. All you have to do is put your foot on their throat and the game is over.
Yeah.
But we have McDermott making bad calls on fourth and long, and that cost him the game. Kick the field goal. Put the game out of reach.
Yeah.
That's what you do. But you got a coach that did not understand that. So the coaching was very inept. I look at McDaniels, from Houston.
Yeah.
I thought he would be fired. And I still think he's going to be fired because I think Houston would be out in the next round.
Yeah.
This is a coach that can't coach Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson and he don't mesh. It's like oil and water.
Yeah.
Deshaun Watson made some plays, but you also got to look at Deshaun Watson and start in the game. You can't go out and start playoff games as slow as he did. Yes,
No.
That last play made every highlight reel that you want to think of, where he bounced off the two defenders and made the throw. But he shouldn't have been in that position where he had to do that, Charlton. He has the ability to put the game away early. And so I saw two quarterbacks that were very inept. When I saw Allen, he looked baffled at times in the game.
Yeah.
Deshaun Watson looked that way also. So when I look at these two quarterbacks, I'm not confident in either one of them.
It comes down to they have to score 19, straight points at a time before they went into overtime with a 47-yard field goal by Hugh Sackler. Now, the thing I want to ask you to, because everybody has their own opinion, and no Monday morning quarterback has ever lost a game. There was a time when they could have run the clock. I think it was about a minute and a half in the game, and they had a 4th and 1, and instead of kicking a field goal or punting, they went for it and they didn't get it, and that gave Buffalo a chance to get back in it. And if it were not for Allen trying to do the Reggie Bush, lateral down, and when he had it picked up about 20 good yards, that was a game where Buffalo could have just taken it. Is that one of the things where you blame a coach because the play failed, or do you like his aggression when they went for 4th and 1 and gave up the ball with about a minute and a half to go? Big C, your thoughts?
That was the stupidity of the head coach. When I think about O'Brien, Charlton, why didn't you kick the field goal? You kicked the field goal, the game is out of reach.
Yeah.
You got a team that could not score a touchdown. So why do you give them an opportunity to try to score a touchdown? And so you kick the field goal and you force them to go down and score 7, which they had not been able to do, Charlton, for 3 quarters.
Yeah.
So when I look at the coach, I fault the coach in that situation. You don't give the opponent an opportunity to stay within a field goal of you.
Yeah.
You put the game out of reach. If you're not going to kick the field goal, then you punt it down inside the 10-yard line. That's what you do. So this is why I said, both of these coaches, this was one of the most stupidest coach games in a playoff that I've seen in a long time.
Yeah, it's all, the pressure's on right now. Everything is magnified. The win gives the Texans their first playoff victory since the 2016 season. It extends Buffalo's postseason losing streak 6 games. Their most recent playoff win was 1995. It's the first wildcard overtime since the Broncos beat the Steelers 29-23 in 2011. So it went to overtime. It gave us everything we wanted to see. I kind of feel bad if you're Buffalo. This is a team that went into Dallas and won, a team that pushed Baltimore when they were at home, and they were just right on the door, and everybody liked them. And then to be up, 16-0 against this team in Texas, and they come out of there with a loss. I understand how a lot of people feel upset about that. Give me one more thought, though, because, everybody loves to say how great or bad somebody is. Josh Allen, he just got, especially in the 4th, Big C, you would have thought he would have a quarterback coach talking to him. Either he was dazed, but you could look in his eyes and something was up with him. He was either nervous or just dazed. Which one would you give it, Big C, your thoughts?
Charlton, I thought he was excited about being in the playoffs,
Really?
Thinking about where he had come from and to where he is, being a second-year quarterback in the NFL and has made the playoffs.
Yeah.
And gotten farther than most people had expected that he would get.
Yeah.
But I put it on the head coach. Like I said earlier, McDermott had an opportunity to put this game away. He didn't put his quarterback in the best situation or his team to do that.
Yeah.
So I think everybody was bewildered with the action of the coaching staff in Buffalo more than anything else.
Wow, that's amazing. I wanna get into the Big C timeout, and then I want to come back and get your thoughts on some more games that happen in the NFL. And I really love this time of year. It's such a great time of year to watch NFL football. We'll take the Big C timeout, and we'll be back in just a moment. All right, we are back from what's called the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause, and you can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Spreaker.com. The apps that I really love are by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing. And I really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. You can also follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast Television, and Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. You just got to have the app for it. Big C, so much talk about Carson Wentz. Is he going to have an MVP type season? That Carson Wentz is the best quarterback since Jaworski or whoever, or Donovan McNabb for the Eagles, or Randall Cunningham. And I feel for this guy, but sometimes when they study players have a tendency to either be healthy or hurt. And he's never played a complete season, even since his junior season at North Dakota State was the last complete season he had, Big C. He's always been banged up. And I hate the fact that he was banged up again, because I really want to see everyone succeed. But is this a guy that you say we can't trust his ability to stay healthy, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, I don't know if it's an ability to stay healthy, Charlton. You were in a playoff game, so that meant that you made it through the entire season.
Yeah.
The hit on Carson Wentz was unfortunate. You know, as a quarterback, you got to learn how to protect yourself.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of quarterbacks don't do. When they get out of the pocket, they don't know how to protect themselves. Instead of Carson Wentz sliding feet first, here it is, he's sliding, you know, trying to slide in head first to pick up the extra yardage.
Yeah.
So I look at Carson Wentz not protecting himself on that play, which led to the concussion.
Yeah, I want to contrast, and I want to come back to him again, but I look at what Russell Wilson did, and I know a lot of people say that Russell Wilson, you know, he's a great player and he has to do a lot on his own, and he does. Think about it. He was 18 of 30, 325 yards and a touchdown. DK Metcalf is a stud. That brother can play football, and the fact, I think his dad was Eric Metcalf back in the day, but he's going to blossom. He's going to blossom because he has Russell Wilson. And you said something that's so poignant, Big C. Russell Wilson, he never really gets hit hard. He always slides with his feet, or if he goes down, he doesn't try to get that extra 2 or 3 yards that's going to cause him to be hit. He's so smart, and he's always been able to play. Contrast that to Carson Wentz. So before we go back to Wentz, give me your thoughts again on Russell Wilson. Is it just the same old Houdini, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, the reason why Russell Wilson is savvy in running the ball, Russell Wilson was a baseball player.
Yeah.
So Russell Wilson grew up learning how to slide, getting down on the ground, Charlton. That's what baseball players do. And so Russell Wilson has always slid feet first, saving himself for the next play, Charlton. If he's got there on that play, he figures one more play can get him the extra yard, and that's the difference. When I look at Russell Wilson, he didn't have a shining performance in this game. You talked about 18 of 30. That's not a great passing percentage when you look at playoffs. You know, you expect him to be up in the 70 percentile. But DK Metcalf stepped up in the game and arrived as a pro receiver. When you look at his exploits, this guy, everyone thought he was going to be a first-round draft pick in the draft last year with the great combine numbers that he had. And he slid into the second round. He slid to the perfect place in Seattle. A coach that can help him develop, a quarterback who wasn't too demanding in Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
And DK Metcalf has, you know, he's absorbed everything that he could in Seattle. When you look at the receiving core around there, it wasn't bustling with a lot of superstars, so he could blend in. And he's developed as the season's gone on. You saw his dick coming out party here in his first playoff game, Charlton.
Yeah.
I think only the future is bright for DK Metcalf.
7 catches, Big C. 160 yards, 22.9 yards per catch, and that long catch that he caught where he wasn't touched, he rolled over, got back up, and ran into the end zone. He was dragging the player with him. He plays like he's already been in the league for 5 seasons. Really like the way he's playing. I want to go back to Carson Wentz. Talked about how great Wilson is at scrambling, avoiding the hit. A lot like Muhammad Ali. He never really got a good hit on Ali unless you're a Joe Frazier, like one lucky time, Big C. But Wentz, when he was injured in the Coliseum of Los Angeles, it was on a run play because he did not do what Wilson does and go down on the ground. The reason you have running backs is because they're used to being hit, and you're giving the ball, but he was trying to get into the end zone against the Rams back in the day when he was injured. And then the play with Clowney, if you're an Eagle fan, it was a dirty hit because it was helmet to helmet. But I don't think Clowney's that kind of person, but it's not the intention, it's what you do. Was that a dirty play? Your thoughts?
You know, the jury's out on both sides, Charlton. You can't call it a dirty play because the initial hit was in the back. The helmet was secondary. When you make contact with the helmet first, now that's helmet to helmet.
Yeah.
But the initial contact was with the shoulder pad in the back to the shoulder blade. So it wasn't a dirty hit. But he was a running back at the time. He was in the open field. He did not give up his body, so he was not protected by the officials. So he didn't have the luxury of being protected as a quarterback running the ball. One of the things you have to look at is Carson Wentz. He played at that Division I AA school in North Dakota State.
Yeah.
Normally when he ran the ball, Charlton, he was big as many of the linebackers are bigger that he was playing against in college and bigger than every defensive back that he played against.
Yeah.
Now that he's in the NFL, and he had not learned NFL antics of a quarterback running and sliding with the football, a la Russell Wilson, who grew up playing baseball, who knew how to slide in the second base, being an infielder.
Yeah.
So that's the difference in Carson Wentz. When you look at the major injuries that he's had, it's been running with the football in the NFL, and he needs somebody. They need to bring somebody in, the Eagles as an organization, to teach him how to slide.
Yeah, I thought it's just amazing. You can learn from watching the veteran players. Franklin Harris used to always run out of bounds thinking, why wouldn't he just do like Earl Campbell and go get the extra 2 or 3 yards? Well, Franklin can still walk healthy, and you got to learn from guys who played the game a long time ago. I want to go to the southern part of the country, and again, congratulations to Seattle. Wilson's never lost to the Eagles. Isn't that amazing? The guy's just amazing. I want to go down to New Orleans, and everything was laid out for the Saints again. I know that was probably a push off in the corner of the end zone. I do think that Randolph pushed off. In fact, I saw it on my DVR like 7 times, and it was a push. But it's not a push that the Saints are going to get at home. They'd be better off trying to go on the road, but Kirk Cousins he's going to get credit for that win. But I think when they have Dalvin Cook mix it up, that was a good pass by Cousins, but because it was a pass interference that was not called, it really wasn't that great of a pass. That's just my opinion, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you got to feel good for the Minnesota Vikings in this. Kirk Cousins finally gets that refrigerator, monkey, gorilla, whatever it is, off his back.
$84 million.
Winning a game on the road in the playoffs, his first playoff victory of his career, and beating a team with above 700% winning percentage on the season. It was a hard-fought game back and forth, but when you look at the New Orleans Saints, they've lost 3 consecutive years in the playoffs with a walk-off play that ended the game. In Minnesota, the Minneapolis Miracle, last year at home with Nicole Roby, with the interference that was not called, and this year with the pass to Rudolph, who, when you look at it, the DB and the tight end were both fighting.
Yeah.
If the DB had just fallen to the ground, he would have gotten the flag, but he wanted to go back and continue trying to defend the pass, and it didn't get called. Prior to the game, Rudolph, some commentators, Randy Moss, said that he would be the difference in the game, which he turned out to be.
Yeah.
But the Saints, you got to look at Drew Brees. He was not sharp at all in this game.
No.
From the Saints' perspective, it should have never gotten to this point. But this was a team that bumbled all game long. Interceptions, fumbled by Drew Brees, his first fumble of the season in this game. So they didn't give themselves an opportunity to win. It's unfortunate that in the last 3 years it's come down to the last play of the game for the New Orleans Saints, and they've lost. But they've had opportunities during that first 59 minutes to win the game.
Yeah, they did, and a lot of what you saw too with Kirk Cousins, that good pass to Adam Thielen, that really helped propel the Vikings to win that game. But something also, because we so focus on Drew Brees and how good Brees is, but that Vikings defense, they've traveled so well. No, they're not the Purple People Eaters, but they are darn good, Big C, because when you go down to New Orleans, I think that the defense is going to carry them a lot farther than we give them credit. Your thoughts, Big C?
Well, yeah, the defense is really going to give them a lot of oomph. But the difference in that game was Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook was healthy, and we know when Dalvin Cook gets 100 yards on the ground, and he was in the high 90s against the Saints, is that the Minnesota Vikings defense is very functional at that time.
Yep.
And the offense, it gives Kirk Cousins the time, because you can't sit there and put all that rush on Kirk Cousins, because you don't know if Dalvin Cook is going to be squirting through the line or going out in the flats catching a swing pass. So Dalvin Cook, to me, was the major difference. Yes, he hit Diggs on a couple of nice routes, and he hit Thielen on a couple of great passes. But the difference was Dalvin Cook holding that New Orleans Saints defense at bay. And we saw Alvin Kamara, who was ineffective in this game for the Saints.
Yeah.
They held Michael Thomas in check. And when you saw Drew Brees not being able to get the ball to receivers, and Taysom Hill having a better game than Drew Brees at quarterback, and he was also the leading rusher for the Saints,
why didn't they keep him in?
That meant that the Saints had a whole lot of problems that they need to look into.
Why didn't they keep Hill in, Big C? Is it about reputation? You don't want to set out the guy that's doing it for you over the years? Or you go with the hot guy right now, my thoughts. What do you think on that?
Well, I mean, when you look at it, it's hard to change quarterbacks in a playoff game. I mean, you saw the Buffalo-Houston game. Would you have changed out one of those quarterbacks in the game, Charlton, because both of them were struggling? Deshaun Watson in the first half struggled greatly, but they stayed with him. Josh Allen was hot in the first half, struggled in the second half. Who do you put in?
Yeah.
I mean, when you look at these games, How do you replace the starter? Drew Brees took Teddy Bridgewater out for Drew Brees, and Teddy Bridgewater was 5-0. The only games that the Saints lost this year were with Drew Brees at quarterback.
Yeah.
But when you have this record-setting quarterback, how do you find it easy to replace him?
That's a very, very good point. Before we get into some talk about the matchups coming up, and there's going to be some great football. It just feels like it. I don't want it to end. It's so good. And then we have the national championship college game after this weekend of football games coming up, divisional rounds. I want to go into Jerry Jones. Obviously, they decided to part ways with Jason Garrett, good friend of Jerry Jones. I know Troy Aikman said that I guess Troy doesn't like what's going on with Jerry Jones. He was kind of criticizing the guy that used to sign his paychecks, BC, saying it's not the right thing to do, not the right way to handle it. They didn't make it happen the right way. So, what do you think about McCarthy coming in? He was fired because they missed the playoffs the last 2 years in Green Bay. He was fired. They said it was because of Aaron Rodgers. Well, I don't know. I know he has a good record, but he also had Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers, guys that are going to be in the Hall of Fame. It's not like he was coaching Cleveland, but they hired a guy that did not make the playoffs his last 2 years, so he was fired. What made him better between not making the playoffs the last 2 years and Garrett, who was at least in there the last 2 of the last 3, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, he has a history of being in the playoffs. He has 9 playoff appearances as a coach. He's never lost a game in Texas Stadium. So he has a lot of lineage that when you look at what he can do in this year off, you have a chance to sit back and understand the game better. And I think that's better for Mike McCarthy. In Dallas, you need a veteran head coach that can come in and take control of the organization.
Yeah.
Jerry Jones has hired a lot of yes men in Dallas. But now he understands as he's getting older, he needs a coach who's been there.
Yep.
Mike McCarthy has a Super Bowl win in Dallas. So as you look at him understanding the game, and Mike McCarthy, when you have a year away, you have a chance to sit back and see some of the errors that you made. But I also think that he's one of the more dominant coaches that were out there that was available.
Yeah.
And when you're bringing a guy into Dallas who has experience, which is what you need with that organization, you can't bring a young guy into Dallas and say, okay, we want you to learn over the next couple of years with this roster that we have now that's ready to play and potentially win now.
Yeah, and let's talk about him bringing on Mike Nolan also. He was also a coach of the 49ers at a time. Just your thoughts, Marvin Lewis. Listen, there's only one person going to get the job. To me, the Rooney Rule is just a lot of talk anyway. But of all the people they let be known that were interviewing down in Dallas, just to satisfy the Rooney Rule, they brought in Marvin Lewis to have a cup of coffee and some lunch, and then they went with the guy they really wanted. You know, race-wise, ethnically, McCarthy fits in better. He's Caucasian. Dallas is known for that good old boy network. That's also a part of it, too. But why, out of all the coaches that they made known, they made sure that the one African-American was also down there for a cup of coffee, Big C? Just grandstanding, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Dallas only interviewed 2 coaches. They interviewed Mike McCarthy and they interviewed Marvin Lewis.
Yeah.
Mike McCarthy has a better lineage in the NFL than Marvin Lewis.
Yeah.
He has the playoff wins, Charlton, as well as the Super Bowl victory. Marvin Lewis doesn't have any playoff wins.
Yeah.
I mean, he's been a great coach in his time in the NFL, and hopefully he will get another interview and potentially a job in the NFL, Charlton. But it comes down to the owners who make the decision. These are the billionaires. You can have any rule in play that you want.
Yeah.
The one rule that's enacted in the NFL is the billionaire playbook.
Yeah.
Called ownership. I wanted to have a guy sitting across the table that looks like me, that thinks like me, that can identify with my thoughts. That's been the mantra of the NFL forever. Regardless of the Rooney Rule, it's there. Yes, the commissioner put it in years ago. It's nice to have that minorities will get the job interview, Charlton.
Yeah.
But just like in society, the NFL is the same way. It doesn't mean that you're the number one qualified person that you're going to get the job.
Yeah. How's he going to be different than Garrett, though? He's not going to be he's not going to be vocal. He's not going to be like Jimmy Johnson. He's not going to want to he's still going to be the passive guy. I don't think he's going to be different than Garrett, though. Your thoughts?
Well, no, I think he's much more aggressive than Garrett. If you go back and you look at the time that he spent in Green Bay, he was a very animated coach, Charlton. He's a guy who'll get up in a player's face. I mean, you look at the players that he had. You look at Aaron Rodgers. He led Aaron Rodgers to a Super Bowl early in his career.
Yeah.
So he's that guy, Charlton, that can push a quarterback and the rest of the team. You look at Green Bay, what they did this year, Charlton. They developed a running game. They didn't have a running game the past couple of years with McCarthy.
Yeah.
That was the difference. Everyone wants to say Aaron Rodgers. No, Aaron Rodgers was the weak link in the Green Bay offense this year that allowed them to get to the number one seed in the NFC. I think that McCarthy can come in and make Dallas a 10 or 11 wins team next season. I think he has that ability as a coach.
Well, that would be interesting to see. I know Dallas feels like they're ready. I don't know if they'll keep Witten around because they're going to want a tight end that can get downfield. And it's just everybody loves the Dallas Cowboys and where they stand, what's going to happen with Prescott. And I want to bring that point up. Brett Favre, mobile guy, could run on his feet, could also throw the ball downfield, kind of a gunslinger. Same thing with Rodgers. He could run on his feet. He could get you some yards running the ball. We know he has a good arm. He can improvise and make plays. Dak Prescott, probably a better athlete than both of them. Do you see him prospering under the same system that those guys did up north, Big C? Your thoughts?
I do, Charlton. I see Prescott expanding. I see Ezekiel Elliott getting better. You got to remember when McCarthy was at his height in Green Bay, he had Amon Green at running back. You got Ezekiel Elliott. You had Freeman at wide receiver. You got Amari Cooper. Dallas has to do some big things in the offseason. They got a lot of free agents. They got 6 key free agents that they have to figure out what to do with.
Yeah.
And on offense, they got to deal with Prescott. They got to deal with Cooper. They got to deal with Cobb. You got 3 defensive players, Charlton, you have to deal with in the free agency market also. Will Vander Esch return at linebacker after his neck injury. I think that McCarthy will make an immediate impact in Dallas, and that's what Jerry Jones was looking for. I needed immediate return on my investment.
Yeah.
That's the reason why he hired McCarthy, a guy with a proven track record, a guy who's been to the Super Bowl. And we know that recycling coaches, whether it's college, whether it's professional, you bring in a college guy, Charlton, you're bringing in a raw guy who has no experience dealing with these guys who make millions of dollars a year.
Right.
It's a lot different when you can say, I can take your scholarship versus, no, you can't cut me. My contract doesn't allow that. So by going with McCarthy, you got a guy who you can just plug in and start with.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a good fit. He just looks like a good old boy that's going to fit in with Jerry Jones' style. And I think they're going to have success because they were so close to just knocking on the door of the playoffs again. We'll see what happens. They still got to figure out what to do with Prescott and his money. I want to just get your thoughts on the NFL divisional playoff matchups. In San Francisco, they're the number 1 seed in the NFC. The lowest ticket price is $222 for the very top of the stadium, almost where those seagulls sit, Big C sometimes. The most expensive ticket, and I don't know why, I think they're fleecing the public, is almost $23,000. Now, you're in the same stadium. Why is the guy going to pay $22,800 more for the most expensive ticket over the least expensive? And it's not like they're on the field, Big C. Your thoughts?
It's called supply and demand and wanting to be in a particular place in the stadium, Charlton. This always happens in big-time games.
Yeah.
When was the last time that the Niners hosted a playoff game? And you think about it, this is the first time in their new stadium that they've hosted a playoff game. And the aspirations for them to get to the Super Bowl are very high this year. So those fans want to be involved in it, so they drive up the price of a ticket.
Plus, in Silicon Valley, that's probably what some people pay for their mortgage payment down there. $5 million homes at all, Big C. I want to just get Big C's thoughts in our final 12 minutes of today's program. San Francisco at home, first time they have Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback, but we know they better build this game around their defense and finding a way to keep Richard Sherman. You know, he's still a shutdown guy. People don't think about that, but he's smart and savvy. I love the 49ers defense. In their run game, they got to run the ball well. I think Kittle, he can take over a game on his own. They got to find a way to throw that dink and dunk, that West Coast offense. Don't have Garoppolo trying to throw over the top and trying to go 30 and 40 yards. Just dink and dunk, 10, 15-yard passes. That's my opinion. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the 49ers are going to have to develop a run game. The Minnesota Vikings were able to shut down New Orleans' run game other than Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill's a Swiss Army knife. He's a big difference maker in anybody's offense.
Yeah.
The 49ers have been off for a week. We don't know what the 49ers are going to look like. They've been depleted defensively. They lost some key players on their defensive line and linebackers. So it's going to be a big question mark. Can they kickstart that team, Charlton, coming in to play the Vikings? The Vikings are a team with a lot of momentum and confidence right now. They went into a game in New Orleans without their top two cornerbacks.
Yeah.
Did not make a difference. They held Drew Brees in check. Drew Brees, one of the more savvy passers in the NFL. But that pass rush from the Minnesota Vikings, those two defensive ends can get upfield. We know that the 49ers have been without both of their offensive tackles.
Yeah.
That's what you got to keep your eye on, Charlton. Can that pass rush get to the 49ers quarterback?
Well, you know they're going to sack him. They're going to get to Garoppolo at least 3 or 4 times. You already know that. So on the Minnesota side of the ball, so we know the Purple People Eaters, they're going to show up. The Niners offense, they can't try to throw the ball deep downfield. They got to get rid of the ball fast, and that avoids the rush in the sack, my opinion. What does Kirk Cousins do? Was it an anomaly that he went down to? That was a push off in the end zone, so I don't even see how the Vikings won that game. But the scoreboard said Vikings win. What do the Vikings have to do coming out to the West Coast and that 49er defense that can get after you? We know Kirk Cousins is not big at winning games, especially when they really count. So that anomaly of a win down in New Orleans is like the Rams winning last year. What do the Vikings have to do, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, when you look at the 49ers defense, they haven't gotten after anybody the last 5 weeks of the season, Charlton. They've been very pedestrian. And you got Dalvin Cook coming to town. That's the difference in the Vikings offense is Dalvin Cook. How can they contain Dalvin Cook? It's not about containing Kirk Cousins. He has 2 outstanding receivers and a tight end in Thielen, Diggs, and Rudolph. Those guys are going to get open. They can catch the ball when you throw it to them. Great hands on all 3 of them. Dalvin Cook is the X factor. If Dalvin Cook gets over 90 yards on the ground against the San Francisco 49ers and that beat-up defense, Charlton, the Minnesota Vikings go to the NFC Championship game.
Baltimore Ravens at home versus the Tennessee Titans. We know Lamar Jackson's the MVP. They have a great rushing game, great passing game. They have been off for a week, but when you're trying to slow down a bowling ball, it gets harder it just gets harder as you get going to stop a locomotive. If anyone can do it, I think the Ravens can. Henry might get his yard. He might get 150 yards. They may even score 20 points. But how do they stop Baltimore from getting their 30 that they normally get, Big C? Your thoughts?
The tremendous linebackers that the Tennessee Titans possess, Charlton. If you look at the difference in that game with the New England Patriots, it was the linebackers who made the plays in critical situations to stop the running game of the New England Patriots. I think that they will be very active and aggressive against the Baltimore offense. You know that Ingram had the calf strain at the end of the season. How healthy will he be? If he's not 100%, how will that affect this offense of the Tennessee Titans? We know that when we think about Lamar Jackson, yes, he led the NFL in passing touchdowns. But you got to look at the average length of those touchdowns, which wasn't great, Charlton. All of them wasn't deep passes. He utilizes his tight ends. And I think with the aggressiveness of the linebackers with the Tennessee Titans, I think that will neutralize some of the tight end play getting down the field.
Well, I can't wait to see that game, Big C. Kansas City Chiefs at home where they want to be. And they think in New England twice, Big C, that they didn't have to see them again and that they lost to Miami to get them into this spot. And the Houston Texans come to town. It's like 2 Houdinis. Patrick Mahomes, you have Watson for Houston. But the one thing that's consistent about Houston, once they have a good game, they usually follow up with a bad game. I don't know if they can go on the road and get a win unless Patrick Mahomes and that defense turns into something they're not. Defense is playing better. Just give me your thoughts, Big C.
Well, Houston has to come outside in the elements, and it can be cold and sleety in Kansas City at this time of the year. Patrick Mahomes is healthy. His receiving core is healthy. His running backs are healthy. The defense has only allowed 20 points once in the last 9 games, Charlton. So this is a defense that's been playing outstanding football. Tyrann Mathieu, who was in Houston last year, is now the strong safety for the Kansas City Chiefs, will have a beam on the Houston offense. Deshaun Watson, if he gets off to the slow start like he did last week at home against the Buffalo Bills, this game will be over early and there will be no comeback.
Yeah, it's a team that they just have a hard time staying consistent, and I don't know if they can go into a cold environment in Kansas City and get it done. Kansas City is destined to return to at least the AFC Championship game. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. The apps that I really love are by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he will do his thing. And I really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. You can also follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast Television, Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. Big C, we started the NFL this year, and we had the Green Bay Packers a part of that game. I know they want to be the last team standing. I don't know if they can do it. I know they've beaten the Seahawks the last 8 times at Lambeau Field. These teams are split 4 each. The last 8 games they've played, outside of that. In the playoffs, I remember that play in Seattle a couple of years ago with Green Bay. They failed to recover an onside kick that was going to send them to the Super Bowl. And Seattle got it done with Russell Houdini Wilson in beast mode. Well, they're back together again, beast mode and Russell Houdini Wilson. Aaron Rodgers is not the same quarterback that he was a couple of years ago. It seems like Wilson's gotten better. But give me your feeling. How do you feel about this game at Lambeau, Seattle on the road, back-to-back, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, this game will be about the king of the cheeseheads. You got Russell Wilson, who went to the University of Wisconsin, run the Big Ten title and the Rose Bowl.
Yeah.
You got Aaron Rodgers, who's a transplant in Green Bay, who's now the king of the cheeseheads there, who has run a Super Bowl. Both of these quarterbacks are Super Bowl winners. Both of these quarterbacks are fan favorites in that state of Wisconsin, Charlton, because they've brought great things to that state. This is a game that's tough to call. Seattle is void of a running game. That's their weakness right now. They're going to need that. They got to develop more of a running game to hang in with the Green Bay Packers because they're going to put a lot of pressure on Russell Wilson. Ladarius Smith, the defensive end, will be after him all day long, Charlton. Yeah. And I don't know how healthy that defensive line is of Seattle going into this game after that tough game in Philadelphia.
Yeah, well, I look at Jadeveon Clowney. When he plays well, the Seattle defense can win. If there's any, Big C, here's that question you always talk about. 2 minutes left in the game, you're down by 4. So say it's 24-20. Who do you trust? Do you trust Aaron Rodgers to drive the Packers downfield? Or do you trust Russell Houdini Wilson? To me, I want to get Big C's thoughts.
Well, at this point, Charlton, it's about trusting both quarterbacks. You don't get to the semifinals in the NFL without being trusting or without having the ability.
Yeah.
Aaron Rodgers is not the quarterback that he once was 10 years ago, nor is any other quarterback in the NFL. Russell Wilson has never had a losing season in the NFL. He's been as consistent as any quarterback ever. And he's that new phase of quarterbacks.
Yeah.
We see what he does week in and week out. The difference is Seattle doesn't blow anybody away.
No.
They let every opponent stay in the game. Every victory that Seattle has this year has been by one score, Charlton. And you got to think about it. They played Philadelphia. They had 12 guys, I think they brought in off the street and out of the stands
yeah.
when the game started. They played in the lineup. They had a quarterback that was 40 years old that didn't do anything wrong that kept them in the game.
Yeah.
I mean, and so when you look at the Seattle defense, can they do the same thing to Aaron Rodgers that they did to a journeyman 40-year-old quarterback?
Wow, that's a lot of good things happening in the sports universe. Big C, I want to run down NBA basketball before we close out tonight. Boston Celtics at Washington Wizards. We have the Indiana Pacers at the Charlotte Hornets. Brooklyn at Orlando. The Magic. Oklahoma City Thunder at Philadelphia. The Denver Nuggets are playing at Atlanta. Utah Jazz at New Orleans. The Pelicans, you would think it'd be the New Orleans Jazz and the Utah Pelicans, Big C, but we know it's the other way around. Milwaukee Bucks at San Antonio. Chicago Bulls at the Dallas Mavericks. Golden State Warriors at the Sacramento Kings. And that's your NBA action for tonight. Big C, back in the day, there was a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young men, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, Charlton, I think, as we wind down this NFL season and get into the playoffs, it's been great. It was a lot of drama in week 1 We had some teams with some controversial ends. It was also the first time in playoff history, Charlton, that you had 2 first-round wild card games go into overtime. So I'm expecting another exciting week of NFL football.
I love Big C. You know, today is the first Monday of 2020, and we'll have many firsts, and you can have them too every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide when you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As we always tell you, that's never, ever an excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and call 911, because no man or woman should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.